Hello, world. You're listening to Eleanor Wagner's Strange and Scary World, here on the Paranormal UK Radio Network, where we're always creeping it real. I'm your host, Eleanor Wagner.
Welcome to my paranormal closet where all the magic happens. Today's guest owns a haunted venue called the Cambre House and Farm, set on a bluff overlooking the Mississippi River. It's used for weddings, but she also has ghost tours and rents it out for paranormal investigations. I'm sure she has a ghost story or two for us, and I'm always in for a good ghost story. Join me in welcoming Rebecca Williamson. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Glad you could come. Wow, Rebecca, quite an odd combination. Weddings and ghost tours.
Yeah, it is. And a lot of people told me it would not work, but it is. So,
yeah. Can you give me a little background on the Cambre House history? I'm curious if it's had a sordid past or not.
It's got a ton of history. The house itself was built in 1867 by French immigrants Adolphe and Hortense Cambre. They had 10 children, and the farm was a working apple orchard from the 1850s until around the 1940s. And my grandmother went out there to pick apples when she was a little girl, and in 1979, the property went up for auction, and my grandmother went out there to see it, and it was exactly the way she remembered it when she was a little girl. And she just fell in love with it over again, and my grandfather did as well. And then they bought the property with the intention of preserving the home and its history. My grandparents loved history and they loved antiques. They treated the house kind of like a life-size dollhouse where they filled it with antiques. Oh. We went over there, had like big family gatherings. They did craft shows out there. And then I had a few cousins that got married out there as well. So after they passed away, I then bought the house from their estate with the intentions of preserving the history of the home out there. And I thought, well, if I've had a few weddings here, then surely we could do a few more. So I opened it up as a wedding venue in 2017. And then I spent the night out there and realized it was haunted. My grandparents had never thought of the home as being haunted. We had doors that opened and closed, but they always attributed that to being an old house. The doors move in an old house, but it's a little bit more than that. So we had the basement door particularly opens into the kitchen, and it always opened, so much so that when they were having a big family gathering, they often stuck one of us grandkids by the basement door to make sure it stayed shut, because you can shut that door and latch it and pull on it as hard as you can and it won't open, but it just randomly opens on its own.
Why did they want to keep the door shut? Just for safety reasons, or?
Yeah, safety reasons. It opens right to the basement steps. There's no landing or anything. It's basement steps right there. And especially if you got a big group of people there in the kitchen, it's kind of a little, don't want people falling down the stairs. They tried to keep it shut, but it would not stay shut. The upstairs attic door was kind of similar in that it would open on its own randomly as well. And again, they just said, well, it's an old house, and that just kind of happens in an old house. The night I spent the night there was really the first time I'd spent the night out of the house. And that was mainly just because grandparents didn't live very far away. And when it was dark, it was just time to go home. You know, we didn't really think too much about not spending the night there, but we never really did. So the night I spent the night was the night I'm like, okay, this is a little bit more than doors. Just made me rethink the whole door situation. My sister had come with me, and I had my daughter with me as well. And my sister slept upstairs in a bed, but my daughter was too scared to sleep in any of the bedrooms in the house. She was just absolutely terrified. She was furious that I was making her sleep in this house. And the only room that she would allow us to spend the night in was the living room. And we had a twin size air mattress with us. And so I spent the night on a twin size air mattress with an 8-year-old glued to my side in the middle of the living room floor. And she was just terrified. It took me forever to get her to sleep. And I did not sleep very well as well, because I'm on a twin size air mattress with a little 8-year-old glued to my side. I mean, it doesn't make for very good sleeping. My sister, she had brought a puppy with her that night, and they slept upstairs in the bed, and in the middle of the night, the puppy had to go outside to go to the bathroom. So 3 times I was woken up by her coming down the stairs, walking right by my head, going out the front door, and then coming back, repeat process. And I didn't open my eyes any of these times because I didn't want to get the puppy too excited, because I just got my kid to sleep, and we didn't want to get anybody riled up. But the next morning, when I told my sister, I'm like, your puppy did really great. You only went outside 3 times. She said, no, she did awesome. We only went outside twice. And I said, no. Yes. And we argued even a little bit about it, and finally came to the conclusion that somebody else had walked down the stairs and out the front door and back in and woke me up that extra time. That's when it was kind of like, well, maybe there's a little bit something more going on here. Around that time, one of my friends from high school was starting a paranormal group, and I said, well, hey, I got this house, do you want to come out and investigate it? And so he did. And that was, beyond that point, we were very convinced that we definitely had activity out of the home. That investigation, I gave him the tour of the house, and it was freezing cold the entire time I was giving him the tour. I had my winter jacket on, I was shivering, and all I could think was that the furnace in this house is done. I'm going to have to buy a new furnace, and the only thing on my mind was this furnace because of how cold I was. And it was April, and it was kind of drizzly, and it was just freezing cold. So I finished the tour. He pulls out his temperature gauge, and he's like, well, we'll test this furnace and see. So outside temperature was 48 degrees. The thermostat was set at 60, and the temperature of the room was 58 degrees. And it's like, well, okay, so the furnace is working. This is good, but why am I so cold? So they started checking around me with the temperature gauge, and behind me, from about my waist down, the temperature was reading around 20 degrees and dipping into the teens with the temperature gauge. And that we attributed, that's a cold spot. Pretty solid, significant cold spot. They really thought it was a spirit there in the home, and that cold spot stayed with me the entire time I stayed for that investigation, which was about 2 to 3 hours. So the Eglantine Cambre, Eglantine died at the age of 9 on the property there, and she's buried in an unmarked grave. So a lot of the activity...
How old was she when she passed?
She was 9.
9.
Yes.
And that would make sense for the low part of your body being cold, because she was small and she was hanging around you. She was attaching herself to your hip, hanging out.
Exactly like a little kid hiding behind their mom. Yes.
Right.
Exactly.
You mentioned earlier that your daughter was terrified. Is she sensitive to spirits?
I think she is a little sensitive. She will argue about that, but I personally think she's a little sensitive. I've noticed that when we're at a location that I know is haunted, she gets more nervous than she does at other times. So I would say yes.
She's just not accepting of it yet. She's not accepting of it yet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's kind of like with my youngest too. She's come on paranormal investigations with me before, and she's had her hair tugged and jacket tugged and that sort of thing. And you don't sense that if you're not sensitive. So at home, she's had some things happen from visits from deceased loved ones and that sort of thing. And so she's kind of like in that denial stage. Where my older is empathic and knows she is, and she's very open to accepting that fact. So
right, yeah.
And time. Are you yourself sensitive?
I'm a little bit sensitive. I can usually tell if there's activity there. I kind of get a feel. I'm not having a conversation with the spirits. I'm not a medium, but I can definitely feel if there's something there. So slightly sensitive, but not. Yeah.
I got news for you, Rebecca. I'm the same way, but you're going to find out there's a lot more to you than you realize. And you, as you go along in life, you're going to rediscover yourself, because I call it my foofy feeling, and I can go into a home and sense if there's something there, and I can usually tell if it's good or bad. And then if I want to communicate with spirit, I'll use tools to do that. But I'm not what I consider to be as good as some of my other friends who actually can communicate with spirit. And I wish that I were, but I'm finding more and more about myself than I ever knew, and I'm learning. And because I'm around this more and I'm seeing it, I'm seeing, I'm a lot more than I thought that I was. So it's fun to realize that you have more that you didn't realize. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And you're right. Like the more I investigate, the more attuned I am to that. But yeah, no, that sounds very similar to what I can do. Is like I can tell when there's something there. I know when to use the equipment by the way I feel. So yeah.
Right. Have you ever had it happen to you that when you were with a group of people and all that energy of everybody's sensitivities in the air, and you're trying to figure out what's going on, and it's like pieces of the puzzle coming together from everyone that's there, and all of a sudden you spurt out something and it turns out to be right. It's exactly on point. You fit that piece of the puzzle in there, and it's like, whoa, where the hell did that come from? Because I just trusted my gut and just went with that intuition told me to do, and it was right. So I'm finding out that that's how it actually works. You need to trust that inner voice that you have and not doubt yourself. Just go with it. Here's another example. You know how people come to talk to you all the time, Rebecca? They just, they know you're going to listen. They know you're going to listen. And they tell you their whole life story. And all of a sudden you start spewing this advice to them. And you don't know where that's coming from, but you just know that what you're telling them is what they need to hear to help them. Have you had that happen to you?
I have that happen all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, welcome to my world, and that's how it works. You don't know where you get that information from that you're giving to them, but you know that it's what they need to fix whatever it is that they're going through. So that's it.
Yep. No, and that's exactly what happens. People just come and start. I look friendly, some of that's empath ability of like the empath, like they always describe that as like a blue light special flashing to people unconsciously, and they come up and they just divulge everything they know. But the part where the advice just shows up, in your head and you're saying that part I'm not as sure if that is empath or is that like spirit, claircognizance or something.
I'm not sure what it is either. I just know that it is a gift, and it's all part of this spectrum of things, and that it's like a sister to one of those. But the fact that you trust that instinct in you, that inner voice, that spirit guide, or whatever you want to call it, your guardian angel, is helping you to be able to respond to that person's need. So that's why I sometimes feel like it is more on the empathic side, because the empath is emotions and sensitivity and how we can feel all of those emotions that it's kind of along the same thing, that you're knowing what they need and you're getting those answers. And I don't consider myself a professional to say, I'm like a therapist, I can help anybody, but I feel like I'm a therapist because I'm playing the part of the therapist, not intentionally, but these people will come to me and they spill their guts, and I'll just know what I need to tell them. Where it's coming from, I have no clue. It just does. And that's the way it's always been for me. But I'm learning now through all of these interviews I have with people and things that I'm taking lessons in, that's part of it. That's part of it. So I'm like, okay, I'll just go with it.
It is. And I started doing aura readings a while ago. About 3 years ago, I started doing aura readings. And that was just incredible. That is like so strange and so weird and fun at the same time.
How does that work? How does aura readings work? How does aura readings work? How do you read someone's aura?
So I focus on their energy and a color comes back to me, which is the color of their aura. And then I interpret what the color means. So each color has a different meaning, but each color also has like a different flavor as well. So, sounds kind of woo, but...
I'm sure it makes sense in the long run.
Each color, when I read a yellow person, is a person who is drawn to learning. They have to understand how things work, and they're actually just driven to understand how things work. So when they encounter something new, the first thing they do is they start learning about it. And some people, that will be like Google. They'll whip out their phone and they'll start Googling things, or then other people will be driven to start taking classes about it. And then others will just buy every book they can on a subject, or there are the people who are hands-on and they start tearing things apart to try and figure out how they work. So that's yellow, and then there's flavors of the yellow too. So
the whole idea of reading somebody's aura is to tell them what their color is and what it stands for, and what they need to do for themselves, in other words? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, kind of what it kind of just gives them a clearer picture of themselves and who they are. Like when you know that you're a yellow and you know that you're driven to understand how things work and you won't be satisfied until you learn about it, then when you approach something and you're not satisfied with it, you know that, okay, I'm a yellow and until I understand how this works, I'm not going to be happy with it. So it kind of just gives you that clearer picture of yourself and more
clarity.
Insight. Yes, yeah. Exactly.
So I'm sorry, I know we're bouncing all over the place, but you had mentioned the cold.
We went on a tangent.
That's okay. You were talking about the cold and how we figured it out. It was the 9-year-old girl. What was her name?
Eglantine. A lot of my investigators that'll come out will call her Princess because Eglantine is kind of one of those weird names that nobody's heard of now.
Right.
So we have that solid cold spot. And then when they were doing the investigation, they got a ton of activity with the equipment. The K2 went off a lot. They had some intelligent responses there. They also had a lot of intelligent responses with the spirit box. So it was a really, really good active investigation.
Do you know how Eglantine passed away?
Yes, it was an illness. I think it was probably like one of the lung illnesses. All it says in what I have documentation of is illness. And she's buried on the property in an unmarked grave. The family knew where she was. They just didn't put a marker on the grave, and that information kind of just got lost in the generations.
Does anybody that comes there to do the paranormal investigating, do any of the paranormal investigators try to help her go to the light? Because I do know that a lot of children get left behind because they don't realize they can go to the light and find peace there and their loved ones.
A little bit. We've tried a little bit, but she is very determined that that is her home and she's staying there. She's happy there. And she, it's her home and she just doesn't want to leave. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
That happens, Mm-hmm.
Right. Yep, exactly. And then her brother Fritz is also there. Fritz kind of hangs out upstairs bedroom. After Hortense and Adolf passed away, Anita and Fritz took over running the farm. Those two children never got married, then they never had any children, and they just ran the farm for their whole lives. So Fritz kind of hangs out in the upstairs bedroom. I think he's really there just to watch over the property. After Anita passed away, Fritz had given over running the farm to one of his nephews and was very not happy with how the nephew was taking care of the farm. He passed away in California visiting some other relatives. He'd actually committed suicide in California because he found out he had a terminal illness. And so Fritz is he's very particular about how the farm is run out there. Mainly, like that, he was very not happy with a nephew, Robert, that took over running the farm. And so I think his is a little bit of, he wants to watch over things out there and make sure they're done correctly.
Do you find yourself talking to him and telling him, including him, acknowledging him, making him feel like he's a part of what's going on now? And do you feel like he's pleased with what you've done?
Yes, yeah, I definitely include Fritz in what's going on. And he is pleased with what I'm doing. He and my mother don't particularly get along.
My goodness.
My mother is still living, and we have problems with her being able to get into the house. So she gets locked out of the house all the time, like all the time. And my mom is really helpful, and she comes over and she will rearrange furniture the way she thinks it should be laid out without asking.
What he doesn't like.
Yeah, if she doesn't like a pillow that I've got on the chair, she'll throw it away. And I mean, she's just my mom's kind of particular, and she helps, but she doesn't talk to Fritz, and he kind of gets a little irritated with that. And when I bought the house, it still had the lock that my grandparents put it on it in the 80s, and my key opened the door no problem. And then all of a sudden, my cousin's key stopped working. She couldn't get into the house to clean and help me out, and I thought, okay, well, maybe there's something wrong with her key. Well, then my mother's key quit working, and then my sister's key quit working, and it got to so the only key that would open the house was mine. So I figured the lock was going bad, and I probably better get that changed out. So we changed out the lock, and then we still have the same problem. My key will open the door every single time, but when I give the key to somebody else, it doesn't always work for them. And my mother especially gets locked out all the time.
Have you ever had a talk with her about why it's possibly happening that she gets locked out?
I have.
What'd she say?
She just laughed. She's like, well, I'm helping. I said, well, did you try talking to them, telling the house while you're there, saying, hey, this is why I'm here. This is what I'm doing. Have you tried that? And she won't.
Have you tried explaining to Spirit about your mom and saying that she's here just trying to be helpful?
I've tried. Mom likes to think that they just think it's funny to lock her out of the house. Yeah. And then, like I said, then she'll come over and she'll decide the pillows or something aren't right, and she makes unilateral decisions a lot that are borderline things that I'm sure is irritating Fritz. And there was one day where she was supposed to come at 9 to meet somebody. I had to go to work, and I said, well, just meet them there and let them in. And she's like, well, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get that door open. And I said, well, I'll just swing by on my way to work in the morning and, unlock it for you. So all you have to do is just be there, and, it'll be unlocked. Just show up and let them in. And so I go there at 7 o'clock in the morning, open the door, flip on some lights for her, and leave. And she got there at 9 o'clock and the door was locked. And she's like, oh yeah.
Fritz.
Yes.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Anything else happen on that with the door?
Not that particular time. They had a good visit that day. That was once she finally got in the house. I mean, she came and she got my key and took it back. And I said, make sure you tell them that I said it was okay for you to be there. When I turned on the lights, I said, Mom's coming, let her in. And they chose not to.
They didn't care. Didn't care. Have you ever gotten any EVPs on these investigations? Because those are cool when you get their voices on recorders.
Yeah, we've gotten a few. A lot of them, we have heard the audible disembodied voice and haven't picked that up on the tape, which is so frustrating. But we've gotten a few EVPs, mainly talking about apples and stuff. Like when we talk about the apple orchard, that really seems to get them going. So. Especially
what did they say?
It was mainly trying to think. Apple was the clearest word in that one, and a lot of it is conversation. You can hear a conversation in the background,
but you can't make out what they're saying.
Yeah, exactly. Which again, exciting to catch, not really frustrating. So yeah, there's been a few different ones. I caught a sigh in the upstairs bathroom. During the last one we did.
Well, the forum is open for you to share more of these stories. I'm really enjoying listening to them.
Oh gosh, I have a ton of stories. My son had the best one. He stayed out there for about a year. Right after he graduated high school, he decided to go out there and help me on the farm for a while. And so he stayed in Fritz's room, which I don't know why
shocked.
He picked. Yeah, I know, exactly. I was shocked he picked Fritz's room, but he liked that room. I think he and Fritz kind of had a connection. The more he stayed out the more I could tell that Fritz just really liked my son.
Okay.
Yeah, and my son, he got so that he would not go to the front door if there was a knock, because there were so many knocks on the front door that he would be up and down all night trying to answer the door, and there was nobody out there. So he never answered the door if there was a knock. And one time I had sent somebody out there to drop some stuff off, and he knocked a couple times and nobody answered. So he opened up the door to set something in just as my son was coming to the door finally to answer it, and they scared each other. And my favorite story that he had happened to him out there, it was snowing, and it was the very first snowfall of the year. And of course, Mom, being me, I messaged him and I said, can you go outside and take some pictures of the house in the snow for me so I can share them? And being a good kid he did, he went outside, he took some pictures of the outside of the house, and then he got something out of his truck. And as he turned around to go back to the house, there's a person standing at the corner of the house. Not caught on camera, unfortunately. But anyway, person standing at the corner, and he thought it was a trespasser, like somebody had come out on the property, and he was going to have to chase him off. The person looked at my son, ducked around the side of the house, and took off. Just ran. They just kind of crouched down and ran around the side of the house. And my son goes inside the house to get a flashlight to follow the person in the snow. Because, it's snow. You follow the footprints. And hopefully give them some time to get off the property so there's no confrontation, really, you know. So he comes back out with a flashlight and shines it where he had seen that person standing, and there were no footprints in the snow, like none.
Mm-hmm.
The whole yard was completely clean, fresh snow.
Pristine, clean, fresh snow. Mm.
Yes.
That's
so,
cool.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. He was pretty startled. He called and he gave this big mom.
Have you ever taken those pictures or any pictures of the outside and looked in, like a zoom in on the windows to see if you can pick up on anything? Because you'd be surprised at the things you end up catching in the windows that you've missed, because it's such a far distance that you really can't see. But if you zoom in on those windows, you'll be getting some faces.
Yeah, we've gotten several faces. We've gotten a woman in the kitchen. I think that's probably either Anita or Hortense Cambre. We haven't had a lot of interaction with the woman in the kitchen. Just enough to like kind of tell that somebody is there and it's female, but beyond that, there's no interaction. But we've seen pictures of her in the window.
Those pictures? Who took those pictures?
That was a fun story. So I had a construction worker out there replacing the windowsill. And as he finished the job, he snapped a picture and text messaged it to me to show me, hey, I got this done. And then, when I got the picture, there was that woman in the window and he didn't notice it. And
I hope you kept that picture.
Yeah, I did. I kept the picture. Good. It's clearly not him. I mean, it's clearly a female and you can see like the dress and stuff. Yeah, I kept that picture and I did not tell him because he was out there working by himself. So there's no way I was going to tell him that he had just sent me a picture of a ghost.
Sure. That's great.
I wanted him to come back and work again. But that one was
I know many construction workers been frightened away by ghosts inside a building while they were renovating. Because renovating is a great way to stir up activity. And it just is, never fails. It always does. And so, because they're curious, they want to come and check out what's going on. And a lot of the times they're kind of like upset because if you've not kept them in the loop and told them what's going on, they're wondering what those people are doing to their property because it's their home.
Right. I like to think she was supervising his, watching him work, making sure he was doing it right. But oh my gosh, to get that picture back and see that face in the window, that was a good one. The back bedroom, that's Fritz's room, we get his face in the window a lot. In fact, I do ghost tours out there now, and I've had several different tour groups that turn around and take a picture of the backside of the house and they'll get Fritz's face in the window. And it's not the same pane even every time. It'll be like different spots in the window, but it's clearly the same face.
I know that there's a huge divisiveness out there. People saying, oh, that's not what it is. They have like this technical name for what it is. And I'm going, bullshit. It's a face. It's there. You can deny it all you want. I don't really care. I'm not trying to convince anybody. I know it is. And the people who believe me will know what it is. And if you don't, I really don't care.
Right, exactly. Well, and if it was the same face in the exact same spot every time, I would say, okay, that's the Paradolia, that's just the way the window is. But when it's the same face, but it moves, it's in a different space in the window. And it doesn't...
Side angle, front angle,
Right, it doesn't appear every time you take the picture either. Like when one group took it in June and then one took it in October and it's the same face. Totally different group groups, totally different people. Like I said, if I could recreate it, then yes, I would say that is. But I have not been able to recreate that effectively. Yeah.
You just mentioned that you have ghost tours. How does that work?
I like to do a 2-hour tour. And the first hour, we talk about the history of the farm and kind of how to use paranormal equipment and that sort of stuff. And do a little mini investigation in the barn. And then the second hour, they go in the house. I have a paranormal team there. My friend from high school and his team come out and they let people use the equipment so that you can kind of do your own investigation with having a paranormal team there as kind of a backup.
What do you do? Charge it per person to come in for the event? What do you usually charge? Just curious.
$20 2-hour tour. It's really good for beginners or people who just kind of want to try out doing an investigation but have never done it before. Yeah, good way to get a quick ghost tour. If you're a more experienced investigator, kind of decide if you want to do the overnight. So, yeah.
Oh, so you do offer an overnighter?
Yeah, I do offer overnights. That one is kind of similar to most, where I just say, here's the house, have fun on your own investigation.
Is that the same as renting it out for the paranormal investigations? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, that's what I'm referring to, yeah. In June, I have a summer solstice. I have a paranormal fair. It's a paranormal conference that we do outside. We have a bunch of different teams and stuff that come out and speakers that talk about ghosts and that sort of stuff. And then that night, we do a big open investigation where I just turn everybody loose and let them run around and look for ghosts. So.
Oh, that's fun. You mentioned earlier that you do like a mini investigation in the barn. Why the barn?
The barn, well, it makes a good spot to start the ghost tours because it's right by the parking lot. But we have a lot of activity out in the barn too. It just seems to be, that's where they worked a lot out in the barn, and it just seems like there's a lot of stuff out there. One of my more fun stories from the barn was actually from a ghost tour. I had a group that came out, and the guy goes to sit down on the bench and his wedding ring falls off. And I'm like panicked because I'm worried about him losing his ring in the barn, but it wasn't a big deal. He found it right away, put it back on. No big deal. Nobody really said anything about it, but the entire tour group saw him lose his ring and find it, and no big deal. So they finished with my part of the tour. They go in the house, and most of the group is upstairs with the spirit box and the paranormal team. The man who lost his ring had been downstairs. He'd gone to the bathroom, and as he was coming back up to the stairs, just as he gets to the top of the stairs, the spirit box says ring very loudly, very clearly. The whole tour group was like amazed because they had seen, that him lose that ring, and to have the spirit box say ring was very startling to them. The paranormal team, on the other hand, had no clue. They had no clue what had happened out at the barn, and nobody had thought to say anything about it because it was such an insignificant event. But yeah, it was so neat to think that this little thing that happened out at the barn then carried over into the house.
I love when that happens. We find that happening a lot too with I love that the person wears the headset and the eye patch, and they don't hear anything but that white noise and any verbiage that comes through, and the team members will be beside them just chit-chatting with spirit, and the person wearing the headset is just blurring out these words, and they connect with the conversation. I just love when it comes full circle like that.
Yeah, and like I said, that was just such a random, neat thing. And no one on the paranormal team had any clue as to what the significance of that was. But yet the entire tour group knew exactly. When that word came up, they knew exactly what was going on.
That's very cool.
Yeah, and we have a lot of activity out in the yard. The yard is like a whole different set of ghosts. So inside the house is the Cambre family. Barn is kind of Cambre family. When we're talking about the yard, though, it's more Native American activity.
I was going to say, yeah.
I have about 3 burial mounds on my property that I was able to, through the local council, confirm that they are actual burial mounds. Came out and they did a blessing ceremony for me. I don't allow investigations out there for obvious reasons, but the entire yard is very active with shadow figures and just kind of that feeling of being watched while you're out there. We've had a lot of people that'll see those shadow figures out there in the yard. And then another thing that happens often is no matter why they're out there, at some point they just say that they feel so peaceful out there. And I almost just wait for it, because every single person says that they just feel so peaceful there.
And you don't want to do anything but messing with that. You want to keep it peaceful.
Exactly. So yeah, I don't have the whole creepy axe murder backstory out of the farm, but it's just more of a happy haunt, a happy home that they just love so much in life that they stay there after they've died.
Great, I love that. Any animal spirits in the barn or residual energies?
A lot of residual energy in the barn. Definitely heard noises like footsteps and sometimes some animal stuff, which is hard to tell if that's real animals or residual activity or actual, ghost animals. Just we've had like some different animal stuff that has happened out there that I'm not sure it's paranormal or not. Some of that stuff, you just don't really know. There was one night where we were sitting on the patio and a big, large buck with antlers walked like 5 feet away from us. I mean, just like traipsed through the yard, right where we're all sitting going, oh my gosh. That was so strange.
Didn't run away, just kind of chilled there watching you guys?
Yeah.
Almost like a symbolic moment, sort of.
Yeah, because we were just sitting there on the patio chatting just like we are right now. I mean, it wasn't like we were sitting there being quiet or anything like that. We were just sitting around chatting, and this large buck walked right by us. It was so strange. So strange.
Surreal.
Yeah, very, very surreal. And then, just...
So we go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, just a lot of stuff kind of like that, where it's just like, that's just so strange.
I definitely think it's not a coincidence.
Yeah, I would tend to agree.
We've spent this whole time talking ghosts and not even weddings. So these couples come there and they have this as their wedding venue knowing it's haunted?
Yeah, for the most part. Like when I first started doing ghost tours and weddings, I tried to keep the two apart, but now I've brought it all together, and a lot of times people will come out for the ghost tour and decide they want to get married out there, or they will come out for a wedding and find out that I do ghost tours, and they'll come back later to do the ghost tour. So it kind of works.
Hey, yes.
Yeah.
Sure. Why not?
Yeah. And like some of them are excited about it, some of them aren't so much. And I always just tell them, like, if you don't want to have an experience, just tell them you don't and you won't.
People are more openly receptive to it now than they ever were before. So I think you're having fewer people that are
most of them are really excited about it. Like I had one where the bride and groom, they kind of knew they weren't into it, but like one of the groomsmen on the wedding party was so excited. He was investigating that night of the wedding. So yeah, it's fun. It's fun. My wedding package includes like overnight stay at the house, and so yeah, they can investigate if they wanted to. Some of them do and some of them don't. It just kind of depends on the wedding group and what they want to do.
When you have the weddings there, do you have the whole venue where they can have their food? Do they have to cater the food to come there, or do you have servers there, chefs there, and that sort of thing?
But no, that's up to the wedding couple. I kind of just turn over the keys and let them have their own wedding. I thought about offering some of that stuff, but I'm one person, and it's nice to let the bride be able to choose all that on her own, so she can set up the wedding exactly how she wants it to for herself. And yeah.
Weddings can be so expensive nowadays that to be able to do that on their own terms works out far better than I think going to a venue that says it's going to cost you so and so amount of money and this is what you're going to be getting. Because if they're trying to make ends meet, to have a place that they can go to that's beautiful and has got that ambiance that they're looking for, that they can create in their own way, works, I think, 10 times better.
Yeah, I feel that way too. Like, so many of these weddings are just so expensive. I wouldn't feel right to charge them an exorbitant fee. I want them to have a happy wedding. I want that my space that is special to me to be special to them too. So I just kind of leave it open to them. They can do it however they want. I've had a few that have done just a potluck where the family just all brings food for them to share. And I like that. I like being able to get a personal experience.
Personally, I know what you mean, because I would never do it all over again. I'd be totally different. I'd be barefoot on the beach with flowers in my hair. Whoever wanted to come, and that'd be it. Because go through that whole rigmarole for just one day and have it be over, and the stress. Oh my God, never again. Why? For nothing. I look back at the pictures and I'm going, what was I thinking? And I told that to my daughter too. I said, seriously, girls, if you ever get married, do it your way. Don't think about the whole grand thing, because the money goes down the tube. It's not worth it.
Oh, exactly. I mean, I'm looking at wedding couples that are spending like $30,000 on a wedding. I mean, that's just crazy. They could be buying a house.
And the divorce rate is pretty big out there these days. You hope for the best, but it doesn't always work out that way.
Exactly. Like, yeah, why force them into doing all this crazy stuff that they don't want to? I turn the keys over. It's their wedding. They can figure it out. They can figure it out on their own.
There was this girl that lived down the road from us several years back, and she was getting married, and I just had it. Nope, don't get married. Don't get married. It's not going to last. Don't get married. I've told her that, but this is what I'm praying in my head, right? And
right.
I can't go to that wedding. There's no way I can go to that wedding because I knew it's not going to last. And they spent a fortune. And what do you know? A year later, they were divorced. Okay, so
yeah. No, that way then too is individual to the bride. I'm an outside venue, so it's outside, and they can set up however they want to. You know, they can get married in the front yard or the backyard or on the patio or however they envision it. It's their wedding and their choice, and they can do it however they want. So
that's lovely, Rebecca. It's so wonderful that you're doing that. I really do think it's a great idea, and it's definitely a plus for couples who are looking for doing things that way, for sure.
Thanks. Yeah, I've been married myself. I feel the same way you do about it, where you want to make it a fun experience. I want them to look back on a wedding at my venue and enjoy the experience, not feel like they were pushed into spending golf and money or in and out of the space. Or
you're on the Mississippi River.
On the Mississippi River, yes.
Okay, all right, that's right. All right,
yes.
So, but I'm sure that there are people out there that are looking for their next visit to go somewhere, whether it be to ghost hunt or maybe to plan for their wedding. So why don't you give the listening audience a little synopsis on where you are and how they can find out more about you if that's something that they would like to do?
Sure. So I am located outside of Nauvoo, Illinois. My website is cambrehouse.com. So it's CAMBRE, Cambre. And I should be on social media pretty much everywhere as Cambre House. So it's Cambre House on Facebook, Cambre.House on Instagram, and Cambre House on TikTok. At this point, if you type Cambre into a search engine, I should pop up somewhere.
There you go. All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing your time with me. This was fun. I really enjoyed hearing about your haunted house.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I always like telling the history and sharing all my fun ghost stories.
Ghostly listeners, you can follow me on my website, authoreleanorwagner.com, where there are links to my books and video updates and photographs from all the Lady Ghostbuster investigations. Also, you can sign up or level up on my author Eleanor Wagner Patreon program. That's Patreon, where you will find special bonus opportunities only available to its patrons, such as one-on-ones with me and co-hosting opportunities on episodes of Eleanor Wagner's Strange and Scary World podcast. Thank you, paranormal enthusiasts, for tuning in today. I hope you'll come back again. Remember to tap into your own gifts. Everyone has them. And in the meantime, make sure you're creeping it real.